Brian, we appreciate you being here with us today. And today we want to answer a very simple but very important question. What is one thing that each one of you can do to radically improve your life and to change the way that you pray? What is one thing that each and every person in this room, regardless of your gender, regardless of your station in life, regardless of your age, regardless of anything, can do to radically improve your life and change the way that you pray? To answer that question, actually in a few different ways over a couple different weeks, including today, for the next 4 weeks, we will be going through a series called Dangerous Prayers. And before we even get into the sermon, I want to explain a little bit something about that word, dangerous. You see, it was a very intentionally chosen word. This is not helpful prayers, although these prayers can be helpful. This is not happy prayers, because chances are it's not going to be the happiest experience of your life if you choose to pray these prayers, but it will be worthwhile. It's not David's prayer journal, which is a wonderful sermon series that I heard through the book of Psalms, but that's just not what we're doing. We're talking about prayers that are dangerous. And why do we decide to call them dangerous? Well, let me explain with a little bit of a story. When I was in high school, I played football. Not the biggest guy ever. I got knocked around a little bit, but I played football for a while. And each week, the first thing that we did was we sat down in a classroom and we watched film. Now, you watch film, you watch a little bit of your performance from the previous week, you kind of figure out, okay, this is what we did right, this is what we did wrong, but most of that session, you're sitting down and you're watching film of the other team playing teams that they've played earlier in the year. And part of that, so you can figure out the strategy, what's their game plan, what formations do they line up in. But another reason that you do that is so your coach has an opportunity to point out to you the best players on the other team, people you need to be aware of. That quarterback that can drop a pass on a dime from 60 yards out, even though he's just a sophomore and he's playing varsity. That running back that every time he gets past the line, that thing's going for a touchdown. Those kinds of guys, they get pointed out to you. And we call them a lot of different things. We call them athletes. We call them freaks of nature. We call them beasts, and we would call them dangerous. Why do we call them dangerous? Because something that is dangerous is something that poses a threat. Poses a threat to you, poses a threat to your goals. It keeps you from getting where you want to go, or it forces you to change. It forces you to adapt. And these prayers are dangerous, not because they're going to hurt you, but actually because they're going to improve you. You see, if you pray the prayers that we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, if you adopt the habits we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, you will not be able to continue living the way that you're living today. A few weeks or a few months or a few years from now, if you consistently pray these prayers and follow through with these habits, you will be a different person than you are today. These prayers pose a threat to who you are today because they will not allow you to keep living the way that you're living today. They will force you to be better. They will force you to improve. They are dangerous prayers. And the first dangerous prayer we want to talk about comes to us from the book of Psalms. Now, I'm not going to tell you what chapter, what psalm we're going to be in today, because we're not going to be going through the whole thing. I'm going to summarize a whole lot of it, and we're going to focus in on the end. But I want to point out a few key verses. Without telling you the psalm, I want to point out a few key verses and a few key concepts. You see, the psalmist starts off with a little bit of praise, a little bit of worship. He says that God is three things that are worthy of worship. First of all, God is all-seeing. Verse 3 says, you see me when I travel and when I rest at home. You know everything that I do. It says, God, no matter where I go, no matter what I do, no matter who I interact with, you see, you are aware, you know. Second, the psalmist says that God is all present, that he is in all places, all times. In verse 7, he says, I can never escape from your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. Translation, if I stand here, you stand right next to me. If I travel countries away, you are still there beside me. When I lay down to sleep, you are with me. And when I wake up in the morning, you are there. God is all present. He is all places at all times. And lastly, God is all creative. I think this is the coolest one. In verse 13, it says, you made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. even those complicated systems in existence, the human body, solar systems, and planets, they're not complicated to God. Why? Because in his infinite creativity and his infinite intelligence, he designed even the most complicated things ever to exist. They're simple to him. He is all creative. But God is not only all-seeing, all-present, and all-creative. God is something else. God is also all-holy. And the idea of holiness is a pretty important idea to this psalmist. You see, that word holy, literally it means other or set apart. It means that God is different. But that's not all it means. It has an implication that we need to be aware of. If God is holy, it means that he is just. It means he cannot stand evil. It means, and this is the most important application for you and me, if God is all holy, it means that one day, whether that's today or tomorrow, or whether it's 1,000,000 years from now, one day God will destroy all that is evil, all that is wrong, all that is unjust in the world. And the psalmist knows this. He doesn't use the word holy in this psalm, but he knows it. It's in his mind. I know that because the psalmist, he has a list. He's sitting there and he goes, God is all present, God is all seeing, God is all creative, and God is all holy. And God, if you're all holy, God, if you're going to destroy everything that's evil in the world, I got some requests. It's like a reverse Katniss from Hunger Games. Instead of like, I volunteer as tribute, it's like, I volunteer her as tribute, and him is like, take care of them. He makes a little bit of a list. Now, this is my paraphrase, but if you read this psalm, once I reveal the chapter to you, if you go home and you read this psalm, you'll realize he has a list that's kind of like this one. He says, God, destroy the wicked. They're murderers. People misuse your name, and I hate them. I despise them. I can't be around them. That's a pretty harsh list. It's a pretty harsh conclusion. He's actually asking God to destroy people. Now, at some point in the future, I'd love to have a sermon or a series on a psalm where we can discuss lists like this. Why do they show up in the psalm? Why do they seem so harsh? But unfortunately, we just don't have time for it today. But what you need to understand here is that he is calling out for justice. He's calling out for people who have done wrong to be punished, for evil to be eliminated from the world. And honestly, I think you and I can empathize with him a little bit. Just a little. Because I think we have some requests as well. I think we have a list as well, but I think ours looks a little bit different than his. I think ours looks more like this. We say, God, destroy my political opponents, destroy the people that disagree with me. Maybe we aren't that harsh, but maybe we have a little prayer somewhere deep down in our minds, somewhere deep down in our hearts where some of us that maybe lean towards the right side of the aisle, not the right, like the correct, but like the actual right side of the aisle. I guess for you, it's this way. Maybe some of you guys, it's, God, I'm not asking you to hurt anyone. I'm just saying, if all the Democrats don't get reelected, I won't complain. Maybe the prayer looks a little bit like that. Maybe for some of you who lean to the left instead, it's a little bit different. It's, God, I'm not asking you to harm anybody. I'm just saying that if all the Republicans disappear, I'm not going to assume they got raptured. For some of you, it's not political at all. For some of you, it's just, man, I cannot stand lazy people. This is one for me. People who, they don't support themselves, they can't take care of themselves, they always want someone else to do their work for them. I can't stand that. And some of you, maybe it's lazy people. God, why don't you just take care of lazy people? If you're just, if you're all holy, why don't you move those people on out of here? Or just people who are mean to us. People who talk bad about you behind your back, Those people who, maybe they don't even go behind your back. At least they're blunt about it because they'll say it right to your face. People who are mean to you. Why doesn't God move them out of the way? Why doesn't God take care of them? I'm not saying that he's got to destroy them or anything, but just make them all move to the same town. They can all be mean to each other. For some of you, it's a little bit more serious. You see some of the things that were shown on the news, things that happen domestically and abroad, and you say, God, there's some messed up people in the world who perform acts of terrorism. Why do you allow that to happen? God, why don't you destroy those people? Or criminals, or a certain variety of criminals. For some of you guys, For some of you wouldn't pray against any of those groups. You're good. But man, you would pray against your neighbor. Because that guy, he mows at 5 a.m. every single morning, and that has got to be a sin. The Catholic Church got together and made like the 7 deadly sins and listed them out. Like the 8th deadly sin is mowing your grass that early in the morning. It's disgusting. Why would people do that? We have lists too. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing for us to have these lists. In fact, I would say that it's not. I also want to point out a key difference between our lists and the psalmist's list. The psalmist says, God, I want you to approach your enemies. I want you to confront them. I want you to defeat your enemies, God. Our lists are normally, God, defeat my enemies. That's an important distinction to make because I think our lists are maybe a little bit less holy than the psalmist's list is. But like I said earlier, probably another sermon for another day. What I want you to understand here is as the psalmist is writing this, he praises God for a while, and then he identifies that God is holy. And if God is holy, he has to destroy all evil in the world. Maybe it's not today, maybe it's not tomorrow, but sooner or later, God's got to come back and he's got to take care of all evil in the world. And this triggers a moment of realization. It gives the psalmist an epiphany. It makes him realize something that maybe he didn't realize before. If God's got to destroy the evil in you, and in you, and in you, God's probably got to destroy the evil in me too. And that leads us to our first dangerous prayer. That prayer is, God, destroy the evil in me. God, make me aware of the things that I'm doing wrong that I don't even realize. God, look in my heart and tell me the things that I have done that have offended you. That is our first dangerous prayer, and it is found in Psalm 139, verses 23 through 24. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me. I love that line. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Psalm 139. Our first dangerous prayer. Our first prayer that if you pray it, your life will never be the same is, God, search me. God, look in my heart. God, tell me what I'm doing wrong, that I need to stop. Tell me what I'm doing right, that I need to keep doing. Tell me the things I haven't even thought of that you are calling me to. God, search me. This prayer is a dangerous prayer. And because it's a dangerous prayer, it's not one that you're taught when you're little. When we're young, when we're sitting in Sunday school, or when our parents are teaching us to pray, for those of us who are lucky enough to be in those situations to have been taught how to pray, then we're usually taught, God, gimme. That's not necessarily a bad prayer. Sometimes it can be, but sometimes it's not. God, give me shelter. God, give me clothes. God, give me food. We're taught, God, give me. It's not always a bad prayer. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. That's the first prayer that we're taught. As we get older, we kind of dress it up a little bit. It becomes, God bless me. Now we're willing to put in a little bit of work, God, I'll go to work, I'll pay my rent, but God, just make it a little bit easier on me. God, bless me. Right? As we get a little bit more mature, we grow a little older, we get a little closer to Jesus, that prayer becomes, God, thank you. We recognize all the blessing in our lives, and we start to say, God, thank you for what you've given me. Or if we're really, really mature, then it becomes, even though my life has been difficult, because for some of you guys, for some of you, you've had hard lives. You've had lives that are lacking in blessing in various ways. But you're mature enough to still find a way to thank God. For some of us, the prayer becomes, God, thank you. But none of those prayers require very much of us. That last one, if your life has been hard, sometimes it's difficult to say thank you to God. But once you get it out, once you force that prayer out, what else is there to do? It doesn't require much action on your part. But this prayer makes you responsible, makes you culpable, it makes you act. Or it makes you bear the consequences of your inaction. If you pray this prayer, God will make you aware of something that maybe you weren't aware of before, or he'll remind you of something that you've forgotten, something that you are responsible for, something you need to begin or something that you need to end. If you pray this prayer, you have to act. And that's what makes this prayer so dangerous. Let's talk about how to pray this prayer. If this is a prayer that you think, maybe I should pray this. Maybe I should ask God to search me. This is how you do it. First of all, commit to follow through. Before you get down on your knees, before you pray, decide whatever God tells me, I'm going to do it. Because there's no point in praying this prayer if you're saying, hey, there's like 10 things that are off limits. If God talks about them, I'm ignoring it. There's no point praying this prayer if you're not going to listen. Just like there's no point asking for someone's advice if you're going to blow them off, right? Don't pray this prayer unless you want to commit to follow through. Second of all, make sure that you don't already know. Some of us, myself included, have some things that we already know we got to work on. We already know God's calling us to work on. So if you pray this prayer and you already know, there's a good chance that, God's just going to step up. He's going to like NCIS, like Gibbs slap you in the back of the head. I don't know how many of you watch that show. It's a good show. He's just going to Gibbs slap you in the back of the head, and he's going to be like, I already told you. Why are you asking again? So make sure you don't already know. Third step, once you've cleared those two, pray. It's a simple prayer. You can steal the psalmist's language. You can say, God, search me, see if there's any offensive way in me. You can say it just like that. You can make it a little bit more modern, make it a little bit more simple. Say, God, if there's something I should do that I'm not doing, tell me. If there's something I am doing that I shouldn't be doing, then tell me. Gets the same point across. God understands where you're coming from. But pray that prayer. Then you listen for an answer. You got to understand this answer could come from a few different places. God could prompt you. He could place a thought in your mind. The Holy Spirit can just kind of nudge you. A lot of you guys might have experienced that at some point in your life. You know what that feels like. It's hard to explain, but when it happens, you know. Or He might prompt you through another person. Someone else who is a follower of Him, a mentor or a friend or someone that you respect the walk of might come to you, maybe that very day, maybe weeks later, maybe even months later. Someone might come to you and say, you know what, there's something that I just really think we need to talk about. There's something that I need to make you aware of. There's something I need to speak to you about. Maybe that's how God decides to speak to you, to communicate with you. Maybe He sends someone to you. Maybe it's a sermon that I preach or that someone else preaches. Maybe it's a podcast, or maybe it's something that you hear on the radio. God can speak through other people. Or maybe He decides to speak through His Word. And yeah, that requires you to read the Bible, which is something a lot of us aren't real good about. But maybe one day you're reading the Bible, even if it's just a short little reading, and there's a verse that jumps out at you that just convicts you, that makes you go, ooh, man, that feels like it was written at me. And maybe that's how God answers this prayer. But whatever medium God decides to answer through, you have to be listening. You have to be looking. Once God gives you an answer, ask for strength, because whatever He asks you to do is not going to be easy. So pray another prayer. Say, God, give me strength from the Holy Spirit. Give me support from your body. Help me to make the adjustments I need to make. And then last step, and this is the hardest for me personally, tell someone else. Tell someone else. You need an accountability partner. You need someone who has your permission to text you every Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Some of you who are late risers, maybe noon or 1 o'clock would be a little bit better for you. But you need to give someone permission to text you, call you, whatever, to get in touch and say, hey, I know you've been working on making your finances a little more honorable to God. How have you done that this week? I know you've been working on changing the way that you speak to other people, being a little bit more respectful, being a little bit more kind. How have you done that this week? I know that you've been working on not visiting that website that you've been visiting a little bit too much. You know Christians shouldn't be looking at, you know. Have you stayed off of it this week? You need to give somebody permission. That's a hard conversation to have. You got to find someone that you trust. You got to find someone that is close to Jesus. But find that person and tell them you need an accountability partner. I want to tell you what happened most recently when I prayed this prayer. There are 2 times in my life when I prayed this prayer, and I'm going to be honest with you, the first one is a little bit too personal, and I don't feel like I should communicate. I feel like I didn't just end up bleeding on the stage. It'd be really uncomfortable for everyone. We don't want that. But I'll tell you about the second time. It was actually just earlier this week. I was starting to write this sermon, and I went, you know what, man, I'd be really hypocritical to get up there and preach a sermon and not pray this prayer myself. You know, I've worked on that first issue. It's still a little bit sensitive, but, you know, I've worked on it. And so let's talk about this second issue. God, what do you want me to change? I fixed the first one. What do you want me to change now? And God kind of did the Gibbs slap. He was kind of like, you already know. I just immediately felt, not that God spoke to me. I don't hear voices or anything like that. It's okay. I don't need medication. But I just felt this thought, this prompting, this nudge that, hey, Gary already told you earlier this week. Now, a lot of you guys don't know Gary, but you will get to know him sooner or later. He's actually going to preach for me in a couple weeks. His name's Gary Johnson. He's a great guy. He's a minister for about 40 years. And now he works at a parachurch group that consults with groups, churches like us. He's been working with our elders for a while, and I've started to get to know him over the last couple weeks. He's a great guy. And you want to know what Gary told me earlier in the week? That thing that when I prayed, God, search me, God, tell me if there's any offensive way in me. You want to know what God pointed back to? When I was talking to Gary, I told him I am a naturally critical person. And in business, in leading organizations, even in church work, that is a good thing. And I see it as a good thing. Because you can walk in, you can see what is broken, and if you see what's broken, then you can fix it, right? But I told him, it is my natural tendency whenever I see an organization or a person or a group that I immediately see what's wrong. And he said, Jason, it's a good thing to see the things that are wrong and the things that are broken. But if that is the first thing that you do, 7 years from now, you're not going to be in ministry anymore. He told me, Jason, if you don't learn to see what's right, to see what's good, to see the blessing first, you're not going to last. You're going to lose your career. It's going to put strain on your marriage. And man, that idea, not just that I could lose my job, all my education would be for nothing, all my connections would be pointless, and most important to me, honestly, the fact that I could put so much strain from my negativity on my marriage that I could lose my wife. I can't stand for that. So when I prayed, God, search me, God, tell me what's different, God said, Jason, you need to learn to see the blessing in your life. It's not an easy thing for me, but something that I have to do. For you, maybe it's financial. Maybe when you look at your bank account, despite the fact that you talk so much about generosity, you realize all your money is spent on you. You don't pay for other people's meals. You don't donate to charitable causes. I'm not even talking about the church. Go to the Red Cross. They could use your money. For some of you, you talk a ton about serving other people, about loving other people, but you never volunteer. You never spend time in service to others. Maybe that's what God's going to point out to you. For some of you, it's something a little bit closer to home, a little bit more simple. Maybe it's the fact that you're just a little bit harsh with your spouse or with your kids or with your parents. I know that's a hobby horse of mine because it's a real problem in a lot of families. And maybe God points that out to you and says, you want to know what offensive ways in you that you need to change? You need to change the way you speak to your family. Or maybe for some of you, it's at work. You need to change the way you speak to your boss. Or if you are the boss, you need to change the way that you speak to your subordinates because it is not respectful. Whatever it is, God's going to point something out to you. And it's going to be hard. But I believe that if you pray that prayer and if you follow through, it will change your life for the better. I can promise that it will change your life for the better. So will you accept that challenge to pray this dangerous prayer? God, here I am. Search me. Can I pray for you? Lord, I'm not going to lead these people in this prayer, in the prayer to search them just yet, because some of them, honestly, they need to step back. They need to think about it. They need to count the cost. They need to decide if they're ready for this. And I accept that. And we're just happy that they're here to listen and to learn and to grow with us today. But God, for anyone who's sitting on the fence, or for anyone who has already made the decision that, man, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to pray this prayer, and I'm going to change the way that I live because I want to be more God-honoring, because I want to be more loving, because I want to be more kind, for those people, I want to pray for them today. I want to pray that you give them the courage to pray this prayer, the courage to follow through, the courage to find an accountability partner, and the courage to not quit when it's difficult. And I want to pray that they have perseverance, that they stick to it, that even when they want to stop, they don't. That when they're searching for an answer, when they pray this prayer and they've prayed it 2 times or 5 times or 12 times and it just seems like they haven't gotten an answer yet, that they keep persevering because they know they're not perfect and there's something they can do to be more like you. So give them perseverance. And then once they get that answer, give them perseverance to not stop until they've reflected the image of your Son in their life. God, we want to be more like you. We want to be more like Jesus. We want to be your representatives here on earth. God, we want to honor you. So give us courage. Give us perseverance to pray this dangerous prayer and to change our lives God, not for our sakes, not for our glory, but for yours, so we can serve you and we can serve your kingdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Hey guys, if you enjoyed the sermon, if you were moved by it, then please don't let this moment pass you by. Contact us. You can email us at info@bereanconnect.com. You can call the church offices. The number is on our website. And while you're at it, follow us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, like this video wherever you see it. It really helps us to get the message out there and to connect with more people. We can't wait to hear from you. Thank you for joining us today, and we can't wait to see you again. Bye.